do you not know this song? This is a great song.
I don't know.
You know this song, don't you?
It's my generation.
Me, tie a yellow ribbon.
It's the Doors. Good God
I
Almighty.
actually thought I recognized it. I'm in shock.
Not toned down.
Yeah.
Ray Manzarek, you could just see him going crazy
Val
there.
Kilmer had nothing to do with that song, and so I don't know.
Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute. You're watching Devil's Advocate. With us tonight, God bless her, our old friend who's still young, Lynn Bartels from, I keep wanting to say the Rocky.
I sometimes say it on the phone.
Hello, Rocky, from the Denver Post.
Hello.
One of the survivors.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. From the Gazette, I don't like him. He has hair. John Schroyer. How long you been at the Gazette now?
Well, if you count 2009, it's going to be about a year and 2 months or something.
Now, you were at the Statesman before that. The Statesman is the, I don't know how to put it, it's the political newspaper for people who hang out at the newspaper. Yeah, it's kind of like the high school newspaper that everybody who's in the Capitol reads it.
Pretty much.
And all the lobbyists read it, and then that's about it.
And then the other 8 months out of the year, nobody reads it.
That's not true because
I'm kidding.
All right, because with them going online.
Yes, yeah.
It makes a big difference because they're online.
I'm a big fan of the Statesman because since the Rocky left, they actually cover the Independence Institute. There you have it. All right, let's get rolling.
Free cheap press.
New mayor.
Yes.
How do you like him?
Well,
What do you know?
what's that matter how I like them? I have to laugh because I had to go to the building today. There was a court hearing on something unrelated. So I happened to just walk up. It was early, of course, German. So I had to go, I went up a floor, and Hancock was there. God, he smelled great. But anyhow, he did. He smelled awesome.
America's best smelling mayor.
He smelled good.
What did he smell?
Not overdone. Not overdone.
Smell what? Like garlic and onions?
No,
something I'd like?
just
what?
a good scent.
Lilacs.
But anyhow.
Lilacs?
But
No. Don't just say
it
he
was
smelled
a
good.
men's cologne.
What kind? Did you ask
I don't
him?
know.
Did you go up there and
It wasn't Lauder for men because that's my favorite, and I would have had
just good old-fashioned
I would have had
Old
to been
Spice?
restrained.
Calvin
No,
Hancock.
because that would have been smelled
Lauder
like
for
dead.
men? Is that what
Yeah.
does it for you? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, so anyhow, I see his staff there, and they're having a staff meeting, and I say to somebody, is that to discuss the Denver Post and how to deal with it? To which they said, no, that was yesterday's meeting. But I almost kind of felt sorry for them because they've had kind of some whammy press, back.
They have had some whammy press, but don't they deserve some whammy press?
Some of it, totally.
There's probably some more to come, don't you think?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Give me from the Springs point of view. Up here
Yeah.
in Denver, we're crazy about the mayor. There's two positions that are guaranteed to get ink every day, the governor and the mayor. There's no real other government other than that, apparently.
Pretty much.
But from the Springs, do you follow Denver politics?
No, not in the slightest.
People down there
Nobody
don't
in the Springs cares pretty much anything about anything that goes on in Denver aside from when the legislative session is in, and then everyone in the Springs is up in arms about whether it's taxes or civil unions or anything along those whatever.
But you guys, we have a mayor that became a governor.
Yeah.
And how did the Springs obviously didn't vote for him? I'm assuming.
No, not so much.
Not so much.
But remember this, in a John Hickenlooper stroke of brilliance, another one. Do you remember his State of the State speech, the most unusual State of the State speech I've ever heard? Rather than starting with the usual, and our beautiful mountains, and here's my wife, he opened with this tale of trying to save this building in Colorado Springs. And it was all about Colorado Springs, and Colorado Springs went nuts over that.
They did.
It was a big deal.
They loved it. It was the Phantom Canyon Brewery, which is like right at the heart of downtown. I don't know if you ever been there. It's essentially like a southern version of Wynkoop. Make their own beer and everything, and great pool hall.
Great pool hall.
Yeah.
So it is a Wynkoop.
Yeah.
All right.
But I can't tell you that I don't know the name of their mayor. Steve something? Burbach?
Bach.
Steve Bach?
Yeah.
Now you guys just
BACH.
changed mayor forms, and that you had a weak mayor, which
Yeah.
meant that he ran the meetings. And now you have what's known as a strong mayor, which means he smells good.
Yeah.
What exactly is
as good as ours?
Does he smell as good as?
I don't think I've been as close to him.
You're so full of it.
Yeah.
Somebody as metro looking as you've been close to the mayor. Tell me the truth.
Well, I tried to bring him in close for a really nice handshake one time, but he wasn't having any of it. No.
What is the new strong mayor role, and how's the new guy doing?
Well, a lot of people. So far, he's only been in there a couple of months, and ironically, there's already some controversy going on. But the big structural change is essentially that now the city got rid of a city manager, essentially, which was basically doing everything before that a mayor does generally in a strong mayor system, and so kind of like pretty much like Denver, same system now. So the mayor doesn't have a vote on council. He did before, and the idea, which people love down there, is having one person to be held accountable. If anything gets
angry
screwed
at
up,
you.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, instead of being, I'm kind of angry at you, but I'm
What was
also
the
angry at the city man. There's
Sorry to take over your job.
He's a
there.
newspaper man. He doesn't want to tell.
No, there have been allegations that there were mishandling of funds, essentially, by one department in the city. And I'm not the expert on this. If you want to hear the real story, talk to Daniel Chacon, actually, who you used to work with. And also that, God, I'm spacing on the guy's name.
Good reporting.
Change topic.
The chief of staff like, took an overpayment and all this
right.
other stuff, and so there are allegations that
2 months
of
in,
wrongdoing.
If he's only had
Bacchus.
one controversy in 2 months,
Yeah.
he's behind schedule.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to get both of your viewpoints on, because it's a great Denver, Colorado Springs story, is what's going on down in the Springs with the Republican Party, which started all when Amy Stevens decided to hop on and support Senate Bill 200, which has affectionately been called Amy Care, to bring in an exchange.
It didn't start with that. It started before that. Do you remember she signed on with that bill about the pregnant women? There was help me out here. Come on, you covered all this.
Last year? Or
No,
were you
this session. This session. The
Oh, yeah.
conservatives have
Yeah.
been after her almost since day one. That's
bill
what they're using, because
Yeah.
Amy Care is a great noun, but they've been trouncing her day one for stories, sending
No.
out things on her. Well, when you have a whole group of conservative Republican lawmakers backing this bill that kind of says, about endangering, basically hurting someone who's pregnant. And
Right.
Fetal homicide.
Right, fetal
yeah.
homicide. Oh, this is just, you're not saying abortion's illegal and abortion's a crime in this bill. So you're a liberal now, all of a sudden. So this started before Amy Care. It's just they're handing down.
For those who are keeping score at home, Amy Stevens is, of course, the majority leader, right under the Speaker of the House and the new Republican House of Representatives. She brought forward, I'm trying to remember what bill, the fetal homicide bill, to make that a crime.
It wasn't her, she was a co-sponsor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then she brought forward, she was a co-sponsor of Senate Bill 200 along with Betty
Boyd.
And that was to set up a health care exchange. And Amy wanted to do it what she thought was a better way than what a federal mandate would be. And it caused a real backlash among, let's call them the Tea Party folks. Fair description?
Oh yeah, it's
Immediately.
bloodbath down there. It's fascinating.
All right.
It's like R on R.
Right, and this is of course what my party does better than any party ever. We Republicans know how to eat each other and just kill each other. Why? Because there's nothing Republicans can't screw up. So, tell me the fallout down there. Now that she has successfully, with a lot of Republican help in the House, passed Senate Bill 200,
Yep.
and no Republicans in the Senate, I don't think, voted for it. I might be wrong on that. What happened down in the Springs?
Well, first of all, she's going to be primaried.
By whom?
Who's
going to
don't know
her?
yet, but I mean that's what several people down there who are Tea Partiers have told me. It's like flat out she's going to be primaried, not necessarily anyone by anyone who's going to win or by anyone who has any money necessarily, but she is going to be primaried almost certainly. And what happened was, immediately after she introduced this bill, they had a press conference with her and the mayor and Betty Boyd, and immediately after that, she started getting phone calls, tons and tons of phone calls, like phone calls to her, phone calls to the county party down there, and there was just this outburst. It was crazy. So she held this this emergency town hall meeting to try and explain this to people and everything and how it worked. But that just infuriated people even more, because she didn't let anyone ask direct questions. She didn't allow anyone to come up to a mic in the town hall and speak to her directly. They would have had to write down questions and hand them in and everything. And so that didn't work at all.
But we're talking about a person who was groomed at Focus on the Family,
Yeah.
who is very politically savvy.
Who got, by the way, the Republicans their majority in the House?
How do you figure?
Because it was Amy and Frank who were running that whole project to do it.
Frank Manoli, the Speaker of the House.
Exactly. So.
And they both did a wonderful job on the Republican campaign to take back the House.
Right. They only got it by one seat. One's all you need.
And it makes a huge difference.
They stopped a lot of stuff with that. And I think it's funny that that's all lost in the translation of all this, is that all these things that the Springs, the civil unions, that would have passed if you had had the Democrats in charge. And I find it shocking.
Actually, if it would have passed with the Democrats in charge, why didn't they do it
We've
2
explored
years
that.
ago?
We've explored that. Different story. Move on down.
Not a different story. This is.
I've written that. Here's why. Because when Ritter got elected in 06, they had just passed the Lundberg constitutional marriage ban, and Refi had just failed. And he told them, the voters have spoken. I'm not going to entertain this. I mean, they did like 5 pieces of legislation that were pretty gay friendly, intended to change some laws, et cetera. But he said, I'm not going to go against the voters who have just said this is where they stand on this.
They could have done it the year before, and they didn't. I think this was partly to make sure that the Republicans looked like the bad guys. And my guess is next year it'll come back up again. I think it'll pass. I think, mark my words on that one. Anyway, this story keeps developing, because now this weird thing happens to Amy Stevens, and now it bleeds in to the El Paso County Party, as I've heard it. Explain this to me, because this is, for people who don't understand just how Republicans just destroy one another, this is a perfect example.
It's going to be, I keep smiling because I think it's a really fascinating, fun story to watch. But the people down there and the Tea Partiers who are involved in all of this, and one of the focal figures, by the way, Sarah Anderson, she's the secretary of the county party down there. She's essentially the one who coined the phrase Amy Care. And that has become to them emblematic of the kind of rift that's been happening all across the country between
Sarah
the
Anderson,
establishment and
who decided to speak out, and she's also a member of the Republican Party. She's the treasurer of the party. Is that a problem?
Yeah.
Why?
That's a big problem. When she first said that, essentially, there were a couple of stories that came out where Ryan Call, the chair of the state party, and Eli Bremer, the chair of the Republican Party down in El Paso, were strongly suggesting that she resign because she's not.
Which actually right there is a sign that, I mean, you kind of say this is where a Wadhams would say, drop it, don't give her any publicity, let it go. And instead it made her a martyr. Like, see, the establishment is out to get anybody who criticizes anybody.
Yeah.
And then you have the papers down there, including, what is it, the Independent?
Colorado Springs Independent.
Colorado Springs Independent makes it a cover story, which feeds it even more. So you've got this great example of the party just collapsing. At last, if I remember this drama, we now have a party that needs to decide whether or not members in the party are allowed to criticize elected officials and stay on the board of directors.
And I think you can't count out the fact that Schulteis, former Senator Dave Schulteis, is a big player in a lot of this.
He
stirring everything. He's behind a lot of this.
He's
Read his
really
tweets,
not happy.
Read his tweets, and you can see he's very involved in.
Not happy with
it
Amy.
started with the healthcare exchange bill. That's essentially, I mean, aside from fetal homicide kind of got it started, but healthcare exchanges was, the big trigger, and he's not happy about that.
He went nuts because the Colorado Springs Chamber of Commerce praised Amy in a radio ad and over the Amy Care bill. And I guess he called him and said he nearly drove off the road when he heard it. He was so upset. Of course, other people were like.
All right, but going forward.
Okay.
You've got a woman who has been very successful in politics. I would guess she has an eye on a congressional seat at some time in the future. That's my read on it. Who is groomed at focus on the family, and she's going to have a huge advantage when she runs for re-election. I don't see how anyone can challenge her and win. Am I?
I think she I think she has a huge disadvantage with this. These are the people who vote in the Springs primary. Remember when people said there's no way Lamborn's going to beat Jeff Crank?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
he almost didn't.
Well, almost doesn't matter.
No fighting, kids. I'll stop this car.
No. I personally don't think she has much to worry about. I mean, as far as down there, like the entire business community is behind her. Like
that helps.
Everybody, yeah. And they're gonna.
But doesn't that just roll into the whole establishment versus grassroots image?
Yes and no. I mean, the grassroots are that's why they're mad about this, is because they think it's an expansion of government. But the business community sees it essentially as helping them out and helping them cut costs and whatnot. So they love it.
Well, this is also
it's the whatnot that's
this is also,
no.
But this is also a business community that looked at what the House killed. That's grateful.
Yeah.
You know, some of the bills are a reversal of a dirty dozen, that sort of thing.
But you also, I mean, the other thing too that I keep thinking about as far as this is, the ones who are making the most noise are the ones making noise. They're not necessarily the ones who all vote.
Well, that's true in almost any story there is. Look at the people.
I'm just saying.
I know, but I'm saying we are guilty of always quoting people like, who gives a rat's?
But they're not the ones who show up to town halls and shake hands and everything.
But throughout all this, the Democrats have got to be laughing their asses off.
How?
Because
it'd be different if this were happening in Jeffco. But what are you going to do? How do you capitalize on that in Colorado Springs?
Because it still draws energy and money.
If you could not...
It just gets Republicans worked up about beating up Republicans instead of working against Democrats.
If you, in 2006, the best year ever for Democrats, couldn't budge, or was it 2008, 2006, couldn't budge Lamborn, and he had a strong opponent, I think they'd be happier if this were happening in a really important... If this were in Fort Collins or...
But I think that's the reason why it's happening. When you've got somebody who will win, 65 to 70% in the general election...
More like 80 and 90.
Or 80 and 90%, then there's an expectation that that person be true to principles. And if the Tea Party folks say, wait a second, they're not true to principles, it's not like they're going to lose their seat by voting...
But you're seeing this on the...
Are you talking about Stevens or Lamborn?
Talking about Stevens or Lamborn.
Stevens didn't even have an opponent.
Right.
Last year.
But you're also seeing this happen on the left, remember? During the whole debt ceiling thing, all these Democrats, if Obama reduces Social Security or Medicare or whatever, I will not vote for him. You're seeing it on both sides.
Let's throw in one other angle on this. We don't know who might face somebody like Amy Stevens or in any of these seats because we're not too sure who's going to end up in which district as the districts are being chopped apart.
Yeah.
This reapportionment is still a fight, and it's going to end up at the Supreme Court of Colorado. Again,
well, it has
would that
to.
be my guess?
No, it has to. Reapportionment goes to the Supreme Court. You're thinking of congressional.
Right.
Congressional is the fight that ends up in the Supreme Court if they can't agree. They're in the courts if they can't agree. Whereas reapportionment, they report back to the Supreme Court their map.
And the committee is working, though.
The committee is working, and there's a huge irony here with this committee, because why do you say it's so important to win the governor's race at the end of the decade? So you can control redistricting, right? So technically, if we were to believe clear the bench, wink, wink, we have this incredibly liberal Supreme Court that's always liberal and makes all these unconstitutional decisions. But these decisions...
That would be true, by the way.
Well, except here's what's happening. These decisions are going 6-5 and 5-6 back and forth because, wait to hear this.
Since when did we get 11 members on our Supreme Court?
You got 11 members on the commission is what I'm talking about.
Right.
Because Michael Bender, the Supreme Court Justice, didn't pack it with Democrats or friendly, his friendly thing. He put... a Democrat, 2 Republicans.
Well, Hickenlooper didn't either.
He put a Republican.
Let people catch up here. There's a commission that is appointed by whom?
It's appointed by legislative leaders, the governor, and the Supreme Court.
And they all get to put their own members onto this commission.
Right, and
the
these
commission
11
is supposed
members,
to fight and make a map that everyone
and they
likes.
redraw the 65 House districts and the 35 Senate districts based on the population shift. They don't usually agree, but a lot of these decisions have been like 9-2 or 11.
Yeah.
The controversial ones are 5-6, 6-5. The interesting thing is the Democrats are not winning every fight, even though if you looked at the election results, they should have. They won the governors. They kept a chamber. They kept the Senate. And that's because the so-called liberal Supreme Court here put Republicans on the Reapportionment Commission, and Democratic Governor John Hickenlooper put a Republican on the Bill Owens.
Are you telling me that there's a chance here that it's not going to end up in a big legal battle?
Oh, Most things end up in a legal battle. Well, you're missing the point. What I'm saying is, this should, for the Democrats, they were probably thinking, we're going to roll them 6-5 everything.
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
I've been told by at least one person that one of the Republicans that they accepted a couple of maps, and I pay attention to this down from El Paso. They accepted a couple of Democratic maps down around there in part as part of a deal to hopefully get a little bit more of an edge somewhere around the Denver metro area. I don't know if that's really going to happen, but it's, I mean, the House is only by one member. It's the Republicans have a majority, and they only have that because of, what was it, like 200-300 votes? That's it. You know, so it's that. Yeah, Debbie Benefield, and so it's that close. And yeah, but it's the same thing in the Senate too. It's like.
This reminds me a little bit about the budget debates, in that here you have, the core function of government setting out its priorities in the budget, and nobody has the time or bandwidth to understand it except those few geeks who are actually fighting it. So those of us out in the public, we don't know what's going on.
There's been tons of public hearings.
This is minutia. This is hard for people, for an average citizen to understand the importance of redistricting, how crucial that is. Now, of course, they go out and do these hearings in different parts of the state to get information, but that doesn't have a whole lot of pull, does it?
No, and I actually don't think I mean, I have to say this, 10 years ago, I wasn't covering the legislature at this point, and I had asked, like, what's the difference between redistricting and reapportionment? I didn't know any of it. I didn't know there were these big fights. I mean, the interesting thing is, a decade ago, we had a Republican governor, and the Democrats kind of rolled everything because the Supreme Court, so you have to remember, you had the Democratic Senate, so, they had Owens had his 3, the House Republicans had their 2, that's 5, right? Now all of a sudden you have the Senate Democrats with their 2, and then you've got, now help me with the math here, John, you've got the Supreme Court with their 4, Mary Malarkey, so it was Republicans 6-5. But in this case, the chairman of the commission, Mario Carrera, is an unaffiliated, and you do not know how he's going to vote till he votes. So that Republicans have won in the Aurora House maps, the Democrats have won in the Jeffco Senate maps.
Carrera's gone back and forth. He doesn't vote completely Democratic or Republican.
So are you telling me that there's a reason to be hopeful that we could actually have a competitive, fair set of districts?
Well, that's all in the eye of the beholder, but he has said over and over again, I mean, obviously it's hard to have a competitive map if you're talking about Wash Park, Denver, or if you're talking about, El Paso County near the base or something. But in other districts, he's saying, I think competitive is the most important thing there is.
I don't know if I agree. Competitive is expensive. I just want to win.
I had the story when I was covering the hearing in Aurora where someone says, this district has never been represented, by a Democrat. And one of the comments below, when I read the comments, was, thank God, it was the greatest thing ever.
We've only got a few minutes left. Talk to me about the congressional races as well. Brandon Schaefer thinks that he might run, he might not, but
he is running.
But he also has a nice say in where he's going to be running.
No, he doesn't.
No say at all.
It's out of the legislature's hand.
Yeah, it's up to the courts.
In fact, I just had a story this week saying that one of the maps that recently that people have seen shows Brandon out of the 4th Congressional District where he lives and where he's running against Cory Gardner, and in the 2nd District with Jared Polis, in which case he wouldn't run. And that map makes it easier for Democrats to take out Kaufman. It leaves Cory Gardner alone and goes after Mike Kaufman in the metro area. Brandon is not happy with that map, I can imagine, and Brandon would not favor that map. Once the legislature, I mean, sure, they're going to have their say in it and all that. The parties are suing, but this isn't Brandon's map. That's kind of a myth.
It depends on what the courts say.
Right, well, then if they put Brandon in the 4th and take out some Republican thing, then you can call it Brandon's map.
Saul Pace is running. Is this... What's the story?
Also not a shocker.
Not a shocker.
That was something that was floating around the Capitol.
In which district?
The 3rd.
3rd.
In the 3rd district.
Pueblo over to Grand Junction to pretty much the entire western half of the state.
Pretty much the entire state.
So in other words, the 2 freshmen, Gardner and Tipton, are going to. That's not a surprise. You're going to take your best shot 2 years in. I don't think Gardner needs to worry unless his district gets changed considerably. And if if Brandon is out of the district, that doesn't stop him from running.
No, it doesn't stop him from running. But the problem with that map wasn't that he was drawn out of the district. The problem was that proposal made the district so Republican. It's like Denver right now. I mean, you had a really good Republican run last year, and he just didn't move the vote totals. And that's the problem with that new map. It's not that he's outside the district. I should have been clear about that. It's that it makes it so Republican. And the way you make that more Republican is making maybe the 3rd district a little more Democratic, maybe making Kaufman's district, getting them out of Douglas County, putting Kaufman in all of Aurora with Arapahoe County, et cetera.
These things are so absolutely critical for the next 10 years. It decides who represents us in the legislature and who represents us in D.C., and most people don't know anything about it.
Well, here's an example when you were talking about that. With the reapportionment, the legislative, 10 years ago, remember when the Democrats took over in 2004 and it was all that shock? And they said, one of the things people said was, we said that these districts, they tweaked them all just slightly, but if there was ever an advantage for Democrats, I mean, people didn't believe the Democrats could ever, they'll never win the House, what are you talking about? But they were just tweaked enough that if the right, the perfect storm happened, well, hell, perfect storm, my ass, it was more than, sorry about that, it was more than
ass?
that. Yeah, it was more than that. So that's why I think Republicans are so observant this time. Because last time they said that some of the Republicans on there were less than sharp. I know that's shocking.
Republicans less than sharp? All right, 30 seconds
Were you
left.
on it?
Pardon me? Yeah, well.
First off, I have to say the word ass because
You do.
you said it and she said it, so now it's my turn. But last thing, Pace, Schaefer. Pace is basically just going to have to focus on Pueblo, which is where he's from, Democratic stronghold. The rest of the western slope is pretty much Republican.
I think it's going to be a
He's
fascinating legislative session next year.
It's gonna be
the
wild.
Senate president, all these 3 people are running.
Just say yes.
3 people are running.
We'll see your ass next week. Tell a friend about Devil's Advocate. Take care.